Hey guys, in this video we'll be talking about a very important artery, that is the Dorsalis Pedis artery. And you often get short questions about this in your profs and your stages and even in your vivas. So this is a very important topic. So what is the Dorsalis Pedis artery? The Dorsalis Pedis artery is the main palpable artery of the dorsum of the foot, and that much is evident from its name. The Dorsalis Pedis artery begins in front of the ankle joint, right? In between, somewhere over here basically, in front of the ankle joint, in between the two malleoli, that is the lateral and the medial malleolus, as a continuation of the anterior tibial artery of the anterior compartment of the leg. This is important. And as you can see, in this part, the anterior tibial my apologies, the Dorsalis Pedis artery is deep to the inferior extensor retinaculum. It is not deep to the superior extensor retinaculum because this part is above the ankle joint and the artery is still considered the anterior tibial artery. So the artery passes downwards, actually not downwards because in the anatomical position the foot is like this. So the artery, so the Dorsalis Pedis artery, it moves forwards, that is anteriorly, on the medial side. This is medial and this is lateral. On the medial side of the dorsum of the foot, eventually reaching the proximal end of the first intermetatarsal space, that is, this is the first and this is the second digit, so the space in between. Then it dips downwards, right, to reach the sole of the foot by passing between the two heads of the first dorsal interosseous muscle, right? So this over here, and this has also been labeled as the first dorsal interosseous, which has two heads, one over here and the second is over here. So at this point, that is at the site of the first intermetatarsal space, the Dorsalis Pedis artery terminates by dipping downwards to reach the sole of the foot in between the two heads of the first dorsal interosseous muscle. So this is a basis of the course, or a basic outline of the course. So if we talk now about the important arteries, so we have the tarsal arteries, and the lateral, which is the bigger one, is shown in this diagram. So the lateral tarsal artery is given off just below the ankle joint at the level of the navicular bone, which is a tarsal bone, and as the name suggests, it moves laterally. Now another important thing is that we also have medial tarsal artery, but which is much smaller. It's basically made up of 2 or 3 small twigs that eventually end up by becoming a part of the arterial network around the medial malleolus. So the lateral tarsal artery, it passes beneath the extensor digitorum brevis, right? And the extensor digitorum brevis is a muscle that is found in the dorsum of the foot alone, does not extend into the leg. I will repeat the name again. It's extensor digitorum brevis, and this Dorsalis Pedis artery branch, the lateral tarsal artery, because it is given off at the level of a tarsal bone, it passes beneath the extensor digitorum brevis and supplies this muscle, that is the arterial supply of the extensor digitorum brevis, is provided by the lateral tarsal artery, It also supplies the basically the tarsal joints, and also ends up by becoming a part of the arterial network on the lateral malleolus. So this is important, the fact that it passes beneath the extensor digitorum brevis and ends by supplying this muscle along with the tarsal joints. That is, it has both a muscular aspect and a articular aspect, and it also supplies, or actually not supplies, it becomes a part of the lateral malleolar network. So there are basically three components to it. Then another branch which is given off, which is the bigger branch. Over here we have the arcuate artery, which is again given off on the lateral side. So the arcuate artery is the largest branch of the dorsalis pedis artery, and the arcuate artery basically it moves laterally along the dorsum of the foot, and this is given off that at the level of the medial cuneiform bone. And the arcuate artery, it moves along the bases of the metatarsal bone. So at the point it is given off, it is just above the medial cuneiform bone, which is a tarsal bone, a member of the most distal tarsals, and the arcuate artery that is given off, which moves laterally on the dorsum of the foot. It moves along the bases of the metatarsal bones. And the arcuate artery is important because it gives off the second, the third, and the fourth metatarsal arteries, which supply the adjoining sides of the digits. This is the importance of the arcuate artery. And another very important relationship of the arcuate artery is that it passes beneath the extensor tendons, and not just of the extensor digitorum brevis, which we discussed over here, but also underneath the tendons of the extensor digitorum longus, and we have here the four tendons. Whereas over here the lateral tarsal artery passed underneath the belly portion of the extensor digitorum brevis. Over here the arcuate branch is passing underneath the tendons and not the belly part. And just before the artery terminates by dipping, right, it gives off a direct branch, that is the first dorsal metatarsal artery. So whereas the second, the third, and the fourth were a sub branch of the dorsalis pedis artery, the first comes directly from the main artery just before it terminates and supplies both sides, that is the medial and the lateral side of the first digit as well as the adjoining side of the second. So in addition to the if we talk about the superficial relations, we will obviously have the skin, followed by the superficial fascia, followed by the inferior extensor retinaculum. So this is of some importance. And if we have another relationship, over here we have the first tendon of the extensor digitorum brevis, which is the most prominent and is also known as the extensor hallucis brevis. It basically crosses the artery from the lateral to the medial side. This is it for the superficial. And as for the deep relations, we have a few of the tarsal bones, including the navicular, the talus, and the intermediate cuneiform. As for the ones that basically the structures that are located medially, we have the tendon of the extensor hallucis brevis, longus, my apologies, which is this one over here. And the extensor hallucis longus is basically a single tendon muscle which attaches on the right over here on the distal phalanx of the big toe, and this is the structure that is located medial to the dorsalis pedis artery. Whereas for the structures that are lateral to it, we have, for example, the first tendon of the extensor digitorum longus, right? This one over here. As well as we have the medial terminal branch of the nerve of the dorsum of the foot and the anterior compartment of the leg, which is known as the deep peroneal nerve. So hopefully you've gotten all of this in enough detail. If you have, please like, subscribe and leave a comment.